Good morning, and thank you for joining us for Industry 4.0, Modernizing Manufacturing. My name is Steve Melito, and I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. This session is part of the NYSTAR Innovation Asset Showcase, which is focusing on a number of different high-tech industry clusters and highlighting key capabilities and innovations in New York State, with a focus on how companies can leverage the robust R&D ecosystem supported by Empire State Development's Division of Science, Technology, and Innovation, also known as NYSTAR. Hey, in 2020 and beyond, Industry 4.0 remains the watchword for manufacturing. Factory floors across New York State are adopting automation and robotics, new production methods, and a range of smart and digital technologies that leverage data to increase efficiency, improve sustainability, and make better real-time production decisions. The manufacturers that maintain a competitive edge in the coming decade will be those that use Industry 4.0 tools to increase interoperability, integration, and information exchange between processes, devices, and systems in both their manufacturing and their business operations. So in this session, we're showcasing two of the NYSTAR funded assets that are helping companies get on the Industry 4.0 train and really leverage these technologies, or in some cases, further develop these technologies. So let's get started. So please meet Mike Thurston of the Center of Excellence in Advanced and Sustainable Manufacturing. Mike's down there at the bottom left on my screen. Mike, how are you? We've got Dennis Cormier from the Additive Manufacturing and Multifunctional Printing Center, or Imprint, and both of these NYSTAR assets are at the Rochester Institute of Technology, and Rochester, New York is well represented today because in addition to our NYSTAR assets, we've got a couple of companies from the private sector. We're very honored to have Santak Badesha, who is the Xerox Corporate Fellow and Manager of Open Innovation. He's been one of the company's top sources of patents over his career. We also have Mike Bechtold, who is the President of OptiPro Systems. Mike's company is also located in the greater Rochester area, and he's been providing precision machine tools and Mastercam software for more than 35 years. So let's just take a little sidebar for a minute. Before we kick off our discussion in earnest, I'd like to orient you to some housekeeping matters. Please submit your questions in the Q&A function. You'll find that at the bottom of your screen, and I think we all look very much forward to hearing what you have to ask as well. During our session, your mics will be muted and chat is disabled, so please remember to use that Q&A function if you have questions. So let's begin by giving each of our panelists a chance to briefly introduce themselves in their own words and maybe tell us a little bit about their organization. So Mike Thurston, let's begin with you.
So as Steve said, I direct the NYSTAR Center of Excellence in Advanced and Sustainable Manufacturing. We're located at RIT and more specifically at the Golisano Institute for Sustainability. Our organization has roughly 50 full-time technical staff, most of whom come to our from industry, and we're kind of an industry outreach arm for RIT. So we'll talk some more about our work in Industry 4.0 as we go along here. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, great, Mike. Thank you. And let's go to Dennis next. If you could explain what you do and maybe tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm the director of the Imprint Center, as Steve said, which is the state center that is focused exclusively on 3D printing and additive manufacturing. I've been doing work in that industry since the mid-90s, actually. I got started with an inkjet material deposition in the mid-90s and have been doing metal additive manufacturing for quite a number of years as well.
Very good. Thank you. Santak, if you would please introduce yourself.
Santak Badesha. Thanks, Steve. A 40-year veteran of Xerox Corporation. The background, education, work all these years has been in material design for function whether these are the rollers, belts, and which goes into marking systems, subsystems, which are then integrated into into our presses. Xerox, as you know, is started the photo copying, printing corporation. 2D, when you put a mark on the paper, that we call it a 2D, and more recently we are venturing into 3D set of technologies using our technologies which we use for 2D, and we claim to be still the global leader in document management and document outsourcing, and we claim also that our technologies are superior. It's a large corporation, almost 35,000 people, 4 research centers, Park, as everybody knows, one of the famous ones, one in Webster, one in Canada, XRCC, with a different focus. And the relevance of these technologies moving from 2D to 3D is, as you can see on the panel, Print Center, as well as the associate other CATs, which are a part of the Print Center. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, but certainly not least, Mike Bechtold from OptiPro. Mike, tell us a bit about your company and what you do.
So OptiPro's been in business 38 years now. My brother and I started it a long time ago, and it's evolved from that to we're a machine tool distributor, we're a machine tool builder, and we also sell the Mastercam software. So we have a lot of engineers, technicians, applications people. So we're kind of a one-stop shop for manufacturing and manufacturing processes. We try to be anyway, so we can really help our customers when they come to our facility, learn how to make parts, what we use to design parts, what we use to program the parts. So we try to be soup to nut solution for the tool and die shops, the injection mold shops, the optical manufacturing companies. That's a big part of our company now. Is over the past, in 1990, we started working with Kodak and the Center for Optics Manufacturing at the University of Rochester in developing new products for grinding and polishing and measuring precision optics. And that was an evolution that started back then and has evolved. Our company has grown quite a bit, obviously, over the last 30 years, in expanding our technologies and advancing the state of the art for precision optics fabrication. So medical, military, cinematography, space exploration, those kinds of things. So, we're about 100 plus, we're a little over 100 people now. So we've grown quite a bit since the early days, and very technical company with a great team here. We get a lot done. We've worked quite a bit with Mike and doing some of the different things that we've done with RIT. So we're tied closely to those universities and colleges locally. So it's been a great support area. So that's pretty much it about OptiPro. We're continuing to grow and surviving through this crazy time.
It is indeed. Wonderful, Mike. Thank you. So let's go back over to Mike Thurston here. So Mike, your team has a couple of Industry 4.0 projects with advanced manufacturing institutes. Could you tell us a bit about them?
Sure. We're involved in a number of the advanced manufacturing institutes, 3 specifically that relate to Industry 4.0. Those are smart manufacturing, digital manufacturing, and then the Advanced Robotics Institute. On the digital side, we have done a couple of projects, one with OptiPro actually in developing wearable manufacturing aid, primarily focused on assembly. We work with Dow Incorporated on supply chain risk tools using machine learning. Those are projects that are done. We have 2 pretty exciting projects that are in process or starting up now. One of those is with the Advanced Robotics Institute, and that is developing a tool to allow manufacturers to assess whether a particular process is a good fit for robotics and what type of technology would be the best fit. That project is finishing up later this year. And then we have a new project that's just kicking off with the Digital Manufacturing Institute. A little bit similar to the robotics one, but it's more broadly focused on Industry 4.0 and digital transformation. And there's a big barrier, especially for small companies in terms of trying to understand how they can get started and get good return on investment with their technology investments. So the goal of this project is to develop a set of online tools to help a company do their own self-assessment and then drive them towards technologies that are the right fit for their company. So that's something that we're actually working with Fuse Hub on as a partner for outreach, and we'll be looking for companies that are interested to learn more about that over the next couple of months.
Excellent, Mike. Let's go over to Dennis. So Dennis, what is multifunctional printing and what sets Imprint apart from other R&D centers that are focused on additive manufacturing?
Sure. So, sorry, I had to, the poll just popped up in the middle of my window there. So, yeah. So the Imprint Center and multifunctional printing. So when you think about additive manufacturing or 3D printing, you're usually thinking about a structural or mechanical part. So this is an example. This was, believe it or not, a stick shift for a NASCAR race team that I did a number of years ago, just the titanium mechanical part. But just like Santok was talking about printing, you can print cyan, yellow, magenta, different colors. With 3D printers, you can print different materials that might serve different functions. So we've done projects with optical materials. Right now, we're doing optically clear materials where you can tune the index of refraction. So that's an optical functionality. We've done a lot with heat exchangers and things like that with, this is not aluminum, but these lattice structures where you can have very high performance heat exchangers, things like that. That would be a thermal functionality. We do a lot with printed electronics. So Mike was talking about the manufacturing institutes. We're involved with the NextFlex Federal Institute, which is flexible and hybrid electronics. So we do a lot of printed electronics, which can be on 3D printed parts or in 3D printed parts, as well as traditional circuits. So those are examples of multifunctional printing, not just a mechanical part, but other types of functions that can be performed. And just in terms of what sets the Imprint Center apart, the second half of your question, each of the centers, the state assets, has a specific technical focus. So the Imprint Center is the state center that our sole focus is additive manufacturing. Okay.
Excellent. And then Santok, I've got a question for you. You have spearheaded many academic industry partnerships for Xerox. In your experience, what are the keys to making these successful?
And just thanks, Steve. Building on what Dennis was just saying about the Print Center, that's one example of the strategic partnership which I've been involved with, and actually through the networks that included at that time in the beginning GE and Corning and Kodak and a number of other small organizations, and also then later on the other academic institutions came on board. So that's an example, of the value of these partnerships. And there are numbers which we can share later on if it needed to be, of the economic benefit for all these. As an example, again, before I give you the answer to your question, which you're asking, the Print Center, which Dennis now leads, has been actually an enabler for Xerox to get into jump with both our feet into additive manufacturing. As I said before, it's very logical for us to move from building layers onto a paper or any substrate, and that why not keep building in the upwards also. We acquired Vader Systems, which was a startup New York at UB. We didn't acquire the entire organization, but we acquired the IP and the assets. And that is a metal jetting capability, which we are now putting a lot of resources, and Dennis and his team has been helping, along with the other couple of cats, which is with part of the Imprint Center, which is the New Paltz, as well as the Clarkson Center, the camp. Your question about what over the years, the partnerships.
Right.
I think the key is in when you try to actually go out and try to find help, whether it's academic institutions or government labs or other businesses. Your ability to actually see what are the motivational factors on the other side when you're going to be trying to establish these partnerships for them to work with you, not just the short term, but the long term. That's why I'm calling it as a strategic partnership. That doesn't mean that industry doesn't go out for smaller, short term projects, programs, etc. We know when it comes to the motivational factors that industry is more interested into the applied research compared to what the academics. They are looking for more sponsors research and basic research. Industry also wants to have an access to the capabilities they have, and obviously that could be a revenue source for also for the academic labs if they do some of the analytical work for hire. And then of course both sides, the talent development and acquisition. That is also one of the key motivators, and working with Imprint Center and these other cats, there are very good examples of Xerox actually hiring help to first to develop the relevant talent and then hire back in our labs. And Dennis probably later on can speak for it a little bit more. And the other one, which is a common interest again, is the IP, intellectual property. The academics would like to have their IP see the daylight. Obviously, they are not in the business of, except now more with the startups, but they rely on the large corporations to license and be a part of it, and that also helps the economic development. So we look for, both sides look for the matches, and so that they can make some real economic benefit coming out of there. The key motivational factor, in my opinion, while I'm dealing with the academic institution, is the getting the help from the industry folks to go for funding from the state and federal agencies. Because we all know nowadays that even the very basic research-oriented funding agencies like NSF, NIH, they all ask the people who submit the proposals, where would it go? Who is your partner? And I do quite a bit of co-PIs with the different institutions, and that also is a motivation for both sides. Now, what are the key enablers and barriers when you try to establish these partnerships and lessons learned at least? One of the key ones is that when the industry manager approaches the academic institutions, either the senior team or the professor, if that person has a academic credentials that helps to build these bridges, and it's much easier acceptance from the credibility point of view. Unless you go with the very deep pockets and then which nowadays there are no deep pockets. So I think the credentials of the person who approaches for these from the industry side for these partnerships that helps a lot. The other one, which also is the longevity, may not be right word, but turnover of these point of contacts. If they come and go, then it's very difficult to establish long-lasting relationship. And I've been, as I said, I've been with the company 40 years now, and probably out of the 40 years, 25 plus years, I've been a champion for the open innovation. Therefore, when I go places, I look for capabilities. I am a familiar name and face. Two more points, then I get off. If you start the conversation with high expectations, normally it's not easy to then it's very important that both sides manage expectations during and before you get engaged with each other. IP has always been a barrier because there are different motivational factors. Again, I mean, industry wants to own the IP, and now you see the offices and the legal teams on both sides. Most of them are very helpful, but those could also be a barrier. But if you could avoid a IP conversation during the first until you actually get really engaged, that would help. Otherwise, the both sides have highly paid attorneys, and they do their job very well. So those are I think those are the key factors in what works, what doesn't work, what are the things one can avoid, what are the pitfalls. But if you stay at it, all these barriers could be overcome. Just need a little patience and credibility on both sides, and personal relationship with the faculty as well as the senior teams in these institutions.
And the relationships are key. So Mike Bechtold, let's talk about Industry 4.0 technologies that OptiPro has been pursuing. Could you tell us about them? And if you'd like to talk about the help that you've gotten along the way, that would be welcome as too.
Sure. So Industry 4.0 is obviously, it's a big deal for our company as far as, as I said, we're looking to supply solutions to our customers for manufacturing. So if we're not supplying Industry 4.0 type of solutions, then we're not doing them any favor. If they're going to be competitive, they have to start to adopt these technologies. So we obviously have a very creative group inside of OptiPro, but we also look outside of OptiPro so that we pay attention to the different technologies that are being developed. We recently, as Mike Kirsten mentioned, we partnered with them on trying to understand better how we could use the wearables for assembly in our manufacturing, where we build our optical grinding and polishing machines. And we worked with Mike and their team, some students involved in it, which was great. But we worked to understand, is this something realistic that we can really use? And it is. It's something that's evolving. Actually, when we started from the time we started with RIT and Mike and their team to even up until now. It's evolved, and it's evolving fairly quickly as far as the quality of it. So it's certainly still an evolution, those technologies, but they are advancing, and they are something that will be important for our, not just our assembly group, but we've also just recently, because of COVID, we're somewhat limited in what companies. We have a major company out on the West Coast that purchased a piece of equipment from us that was preferring that we didn't come to install the machine. So we actually bought another set of the View 6 glasses, like we learned from RIT. We got them to them so that we could see what they were looking at, and we used that as a way to install the machine here from OptiPro. It was actually in Colorado, and so we were able to talk them through it, and actually even talk through the training on it with them. So it's something that you couldn't do 10 years ago. It's because the technology's improved so much. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at. Automation. We're looking at, we're interested in learning more about the work that the folks at RIT are doing in automation. We're looking at collaborative robots. We've supplied those on several systems and developed our own software to integrate with our own product line, where the machine grinds, polishes, measures, the optic washes it in a rinse station. So pretty complex systems where they load the parts and they come out completed and inspected. So that's really what these are, some systems that we built for a major prime contractor in Florida, precision optic contractor, they're looking for solutions to improve their part quality, but also help them with the issues of people and getting people at the speed and capability that they need to be able to make these kinds of parts. So we're seeing a lot of opportunities with automation, a lot of opportunities with automation with machining centers, and we're putting robots on CNC milling machines and CNC turning machines, so people can have an operator loading the parts and loading them into the robot cartridges or decks that they would then go into the machine and produce at a volume where they don't have to be standing there loading the parts all the time. So these are the things that are going to help from 4.0 technology. I also see big opportunities. We're also working with RIT on sensing technologies and understanding spindle torques and understanding what impact does that have on the precision and the quality of the part and the life of the spindle, and looking at, we have a process for polishing that we worked closely with Mike on, as far as and it's specific to our product. So it was great to get an outside help with it. So and that's all improving our quality of our product. So Industry 4.0 is now, and it's moving fast. And I think that manufacturing companies in the United States that don't get on board with it at some level, they're going to struggle in the future, because they won't be able to maintain a competitive advantage. So it's critical, and we're very involved in it.
Okay, excellent. Mike, it's great to have you both on the panel, because we can sort of get the perspective from each side of a very successful industry partnership. And Mike Thurston, I'm wondering if you could give us some examples of the most exciting ways that you've helped companies improve their operations recently. What kind of assets does the COE have for companies that are looking to improve their products or their operations?
I mentioned before that our team is made up predominantly of professional staff that come from industry. As Mike mentioned, we do augment that with students through the co-op program at RIT. So we do have a lot of student engagement, but we have our staff comes from both kind of the product development and the manufacturing process development side. So we have resources that can help in that way. In terms of assets we have in the laboratory, we have quite a bit of resources for kind of more product development, product validation. On the manufacturing tool side, We do have some robotic and vision systems that we use internally for development. We do a lot of work with the remanufacturing industry, so we have technologies related to repair and assembly, disassembly, and starting to use advanced technologies in those processes in the laboratory. We also have a very strong program in machine learning, which has been supported for many years by the Office of Naval Research. So for some of the work that Mike talked about, where you're trying to understand from data, what does that mean to the state or health of your equipment? Those are technologies that come into play. So that's kind of the background. In terms of things that we've kind of done recently, these are not maybe too exciting from a technology standpoint, but they're important for the companies. We've done quite a bit of work in facility and process expansion and planning. So companies that are looking to expand and don't know how to fit everything into their facility or how to lay things out for best efficiency. We also have done some work with small companies that were having either didn't have an ERP system or were having trouble with their ERP system. So we help them select a new system and implement that. And as the manufacturers know, that's the core information system for operating your manufacturing business. So getting a good system set up is very important. And a little more interesting, maybe technology-wise, we're currently working on a robotic feasibility project using the ARM project. It's a case study for the ARM project for a company in the food industry. We also have done quite a bit of, we probably do a little more work on the product development side, and we do a lot of work in design for manufacturing, particularly with startups and new products. So a couple of very interesting projects in that area, one with an advanced solar technology, and then another actually with a air purification technology, which is being commercialized now for COVID protection. It's basically a system that destroys biocontaminants, which was originally targeted towards the military, but is now being applied for healthcare situations. So those projects really focus on taking a product concept and using our resources, and many times startups don't have a deep manufacturing expertise, so we can help them design the product so it can be cost effectively manufactured and assembled. So I think I'll leave it at that, Steve.
Okay, great, Mike. Thank you. So we're at about the halfway mark, and we have a question from the audience, and I think it's a good one. It's a very timely one, and it reads like this. In the current world of COVID-19, what do you view as the largest impediment or impediments to a manufacturer adopting advanced manufacturing technologies? And then what strategies have you found successful that get around specific obstacles to promote greater adoption? So Dennis, would you like to take a crack at this one?
So I think the example that Mike gave a moment ago is one of them in the COVID world, where you shipped a machine out to a customer and they won't allow you to come. I have the reverse problem, which is I have a very expensive micro/nano resolution CT scanner that's been sitting in the lab for 6 months that I can't get them to. I want them to come, but they're in Georgia and they're on New York's no-fly zone, and I can't get them in here. So as it pertains to this question, you know, I think some of the largest impediments, a category of impediments is getting new advanced manufacturing equipment installed and training and support. It does take, a lot of these machines do have steeper learning curves and things like that. And so you do need, there's not just the initial installation, there's the follow-up training and support and so on. And that's more difficult. So I think the example that Mike gave with some alternatives with virtual reality, augmented reality, and so on and so forth, and remote communications like we're doing right now is, is a partial answer, at least, to that question.
Okay, good. Extremely helpful. And Santok, with your experience, I'd like to get your perspective on this as well. I mean, in the current world of COVID-19, what do you see as the biggest impediments to a manufacturer adopting advanced manufacturing technology? Certainly there are obstacles aside from even COVID-19, but what do you think's changed in the last 6 months or so?
Yeah, and Dan is actually a good example of the scanner. And we, that we are waiting. And there are reasons, as he said, that one, it was a delivery, the place was not open. Now they have to come and install it and train, and so it's taking much longer time than it would have been otherwise. I think the issue is that is more in the hardware-centric offerings. People have to be in the labs, working, doing stuff, nuts and bolts and whatever need to be done, physically on the sites. And these restrictions of entry into the building because of the COVID has hampered progress. And there are some real examples in my own shop. But I think it is now opening up. As careful, cautious as the system is, from the safety point of view of the workers, but I think there are now measures being put in place and monitored. I think it is helping. It is opening up, unless once again you have a second or third wave, then nobody can do anything about it anyway. Remote learning and doing things, robotics is of course is one of those, but still those have to be managed by people. And I'm sure we're not there yet, but there may be some industry, light manufacturing maybe, but not the hardware, real hardware centric people who are making the presses and the like.
Very good. And Mike
Steve,
Bechtold,
if I
you're
can
living
add,
this world. Oh, sorry, Dennis, go ahead.
I was actually just going to add one other thing, that these advanced manufacturing technologies are so software centric now, which they didn't used to be. Even just things as simple as having your IT department stay on top. I have a Windows 7 machine out there that got shut off a while back because the university won't allow us to run Windows 7 machines anymore. And even things like that with just pure electromechanical machines, you didn't used to have to worry about that sort of thing. And now there's the whole IT side that staying on top of that is an issue as well.
Okay, great. And Mike, at OptiPro, so let's sort of take this question and maybe put a little different spin on it. I know that the COVID-19 pandemic has really exposed weaknesses in a lot of manufacturer supply chains. And so I'm wondering if you could tell us a bit about digitizing supply chains and how RIT can help companies move in this direction.
So I guess I'm going to say, Steve, I'm not really sure what you mean by digitizing supply chains, because if it means how are we, I mean, pretty much we are. It is digitized. I mean, as far as what we're bringing in, it's all done via the web as far as ordering and all that kind of stuff. So it's fairly, it is fairly, so that I guess hasn't changed for us that much. I mean, COVID's had an impact on our company, and certainly I always say I'm not going to complain, because there's so many companies that are in way worse condition than we are in these tough times that don't have it. We have been deemed essential business, so our supply chain, as far as getting things here and being able to support as much as possible our customers, has not been a major problem. So it's been as far as working with RIT, I'm not sure exactly how they'll be able to help us, but it's certainly it'll be interesting to see. I don't have a specific good response to that question other than COVID has certainly impacted our company, and we are surviving. We've got a great team. A lot of them have had to work from home, as far as, and again, that made it possible that we could have our employees working from home because of the power of computing and these kinds of being able to talk with our employees and what they're doing, any trials that they've had. So you can pretty much stay connected to your employees even if they are working at home. We did that because it was a safe thing to do, as safe as we could. So and now most of them are back. We have the greater percentage of our employees are back working here at OptiPro. So we're in a pretty good shape there. One of the things that OptiPro did during that was there was a need from the U of R at Strong for face masks, and we were able to get creative and come up with a way to make face shields with our abrasive water jet cutting. So we supplied them several thousand face shields that they were able to use, and we actually worked with Harbeck to build a quick mold for safety glasses to try to get them some safety glasses. So we've been trying to help out also in these tough times.
Good,
Hey,
good.
Steve, I can talk
Yeah,
to
please.
supply chain digitization if you want a little bit. I think COVID exposed a lot of weaknesses in supply chains. Many years of cutting out fat and moving to just in time and lean really reduced inventories and shortened supply chains, but also made them more subject to disruption. That's an area that I mentioned before. We have done some work with Dow Chemical through the Digital Manufacturing Institute, where they were looking at tools to be able to identify weaknesses in their supply chain. That was more focused on weather type disruptions. And I think, once we're through COVID, hopefully we don't have another severe pandemic in the near future. 100 years from now would be okay with me between pandemics. But, you see increasing severity of weather events. Hurricanes are becoming more severe. The fires in California. This is potentially, other than kind of trade disruptions that we may see as well, a future challenge for stability and resilience of supply chains. So there are some tools that are becoming more available. Some of them are kind of best practice oriented to help companies evaluate how at risk or resilient their supply chain are. But these are advancing fairly quickly, and I would expect to see some more advanced ones commercially available in the near future. I think some of the larger companies have their own. DHL is one company, of course, they're a logistics provider, but they have a significant amount of tools for companies to help optimize their supply chain to take into account some of these kind of issues. So I think we'll see more and more of that going forward.
All right, sounds good. And Dennis, I'd like to sort of dig in a little more and learn about some of the companies that Imprint has worked with recently. And I'd also like to sort of find out, are they all big companies? Do you ever work with smaller companies? And is there an ideal customer profile, so to speak?
We've worked with, so the best example of the extremes I can give, Santok gave an introduction with the startup company out of Buffalo. We worked with them. That was a father-son startup company. And when I visited with them, they were working in the basement of their house, probably doing things the fire marshal wouldn't have approved of. But so it was a two-person out of the basement of their house. We worked with them. We were also working with Xerox at the time, doing the things that Santok was talking about. In terms of some of the strategies and where the opportunities are. And through mutual work with those two companies at the same time, ultimately that led to the startup company becoming a part of Xerox. So that's a massive company, multinational company like Xerox, a two-person startup in the basement of their house, working together. We do a lot of SBIR proposals. I serve as a reviewer quite often of SBIR proposals, and so I've helped small companies write SBIR proposals. Some of the other examples, we had one case, again, a small company, Key Systems. They had no experience with injection molding or plastic part design, but they needed a plastic housing. So, we just did a real quick, designed a short run mold here, 3D printed it overnight, injection molded parts the next day, and that let them confirm that the geometry was right. They didn't have any mistakes there. Then they were able to take that design and go to a traditional tool and die maker, and they had their steel molds made, that sort of thing. When we talked about multifunctional printing in the beginning, we talked about other types of materials and processes and things. So we've got a company called Prism Inc., which is another startup, and they are developing a carbon fiber composite 3D printing process that does lightweight lattice structures. So high strength, lightweight carbon fiber parts. And these are the, some of these crazy well, you can't really see that very well. These are like plate lattice structures that are very, very strong and lightweight. So we do a lot of those types of things. We've done ceramic materials. So that seems to be a rapidly growing area of interest in additive manufacturing. So there've been a couple companies that we work with on additive manufacturing of ceramic materials. And then the last example I'll give is even on the software side. So there's a company in New York City called N-Topology that makes absolutely phenomenal software for the design of, I showed these lattice structures here. That's not easy to design that from scratch in a CAD package. So they have software that greatly streamlines the process of designing parts with these crazy geometries that are lightweight and high strength and so on. And so we have their software, and we're working with students actually developing some tutorials and training materials and working on upcoming workshops and things like that.
Okay, great. And then Santok, from your perspective, as coming from a large company, what's it been like to work with some of the NYSTAR assets?
As Dennis was referring to and building on what I said before, if you want to look for an example of success of the Startup New York program, this company, it was started under that banner at UB. And with Dennis's help, because he knew them and I knew Dennis, then was the Print Center. That little startup became now one of our major initiatives, which is the metal, getting metal drops to make structures. And hope is that that's going to at least save jobs, hopefully add more jobs. So that's just one example of working with one of the CADs. I personally prefer the CADs which have focus areas, like Print Center is a 3D. Clarkson is the Center for Advanced Material Processing. And Alfred is ceramics. Then New Paltz said the equipment. Again, Stony Brook, there is either the Center of Excellence or CADs. They are more around the medical devices arena. There are others too. So those are some of the CADs which have, in my opinion, a little bit biased, forgive me for that, has a more value add to the CAD system than some of the ones which are more general. By the way, I just submitted Binghamton, that we work very closely with Binghamton as well as with the UB also. So it all depends upon, Steve, what is that our new initiatives are, and where this skill set is. Do we have the relationship there? Where do we start? And it comes back down to the first question that you asked me about the partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
So these two are related. I would say though that I think the CAD system in the New York State is well and alive and should be, and is really the engine for economic growth. I'm a great fan of it.
Good, good. And Mike Bechtold from OptiPro, I think we have just a minute or two before we have to wrap up. I wanted to ask you about the CFA grant that you got. Congratulations on that. How are you using that? You expanding the company? Are you adding space, adding equipment? What are you up to?
So a little bit of everything, but mainly when we applied for that grant, it was for putting a bigger facility on. We added over 15,000 square feet to our existing 45,000 square feet, and it was really because of our business growing and a need for more space so that we weren't stepping over each other. So we added a brand new technology center for our machine tool division, brand new training facility and area for our Mastercam software sales and support, and then an additional area in that area for our automation work that we're doing. So that gave us the room to start to do those things. So that was a big part of it. There was a little bit of equipment in it, but I can tell you one thing I would say, just in encourage people to do that, but also to understand that it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes time once you're selected. You pretty much have to spend the money to get the money, but it's still worth doing if you know you need these facilities and stuff. It was a real. We did get we actually got our funding for our CFA, which happened about 2 years ago. I think we got that this year. So it takes time. You have to complete the project, and then it was very, very, very useful for us, very helpful.
Fantastic. And with that, I think we have to wrap up. So on behalf of the panel and myself, we hope that you enjoyed today's session. This session has been recorded and will be provided to you in a post-event email. So have a great day, and thank you again for joining us here for Industry 4.0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve.
Bye-bye.